Alrighty, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third Fireside Chat. I'm joined again here with Marshall, and I really enjoy the last couple of ones we've been doing, and I look forward to this one as well. So I welcome you again, Marshall.
Awesome. Thanks, Marcus.
So tonight, I thought we would take a little bit of a different approach, mainly where I wanted to talk about the platform a little more. I wanted to go kind of in depth to, our process, the education concept, and kind of go along with that and dive a little bit deeper into that. And it's going to probably be a couple of episodes to really get through a lot of this because there's a lot of information. But I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to start out with is education itself. And why is it such a big focus for, the team and the overall Atheneum project? Why is education the one that has been chosen to be the main focus?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So other than just being the use case that we voted on last year by our community, there are a lot of inefficiencies found in modern day education. Some of those we've spoken about before, but one of them I would like to actually speak on, and I have a specific paragraph I'd like to read out of the white paper on our website. So this is a Forbes article that's specifically talking about the increased costs over the last few decades. And this is a study that Forbes is quoting, and it says, a study found that the California State University system had 11,614 full-time faculty in 1973 and 12,019 in 2008. During that same time period, administrators grew from 3,800, so 3,800 administrators, to 12,183, ending up with more administrators than faculty. And so this has continued to increase since 2008. And so highlighting this specific portion of the article, what it's showing is that even though we're getting all these brand new buildings for these universities, all these colleges they're building new dorms, building new facilities, they're not necessarily adding educators. They are adding administrative staff, and so that's going to be from people who cook the food to process transcripts. They clean the floors. This is kind of all-inclusive into administrative. And so with that being said, this is a big inefficiency. It's creating a ton of extra costs, but the students are not getting a whole lot of value. And so we believe that Atheneum can help solve some of that by alleviating the need for a specific building, a brick and mortar building, to allow educators to actually teach. A lot of these universities, they quote their specific student to faculty ratio being a low number. We here at ABC University, we have a 14-to-1 student to faculty ratio, which, comes across really good. But when you say faculty, it's not educator specific. It actually includes all your administrative staff, includes people who cook for you, who clean for you, who, they're doing the floors, the people who mow your lawns outside the facilities. And so when you add in these educators and the 12,019 educators in 2008 and the 12,183 administrators, which is more than the faculty now in 2008, you actually, in reality, have maybe a 28-to-1 student to faculty ratio, student to educator ratio, I should say. And so the quality, while the costs of institution have increased to help pay for more administrative support services and more people to hire to fill those services, and for these new buildings, there's no increase in the quality of education. And so that's why that's just one example of why education is so important. So with Atheneum, we're hoping that we can positively affect those administrative costs and to help bring education down in terms of costs. So long-winded statement. That's why we're focused on education, to help improve the inefficiencies.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting. I know anyone out there that's either gone through college or is currently going through college. I remember my classes myself. It's kind of funny how no matter how they put it about the ratio, you're still going to get the classes that I remember to this day, 400 or 500 people, and they're massive. It's almost like you're in a giant movie theater. And
right.
And I understand there's a lot of kids and everything, but sometimes people aren't really getting the most out of those classes. And so there needs to be definitely a better focus on the ratio as far as educators versus overall faculty. So I think that's a really interesting concept to explore for sure. Now, something that I've been approached about, and I know I've heard either on social media or other places, and I'm sure a lot of other people are asking these questions, especially kind of in the crypto boom they're in right now. There's so many projects doing the same kind of deal. What makes Atheneum different than the classic YouTube or BitDegree or other education services or platforms? What are we doing differently, or what is Atheneum doing differently to kind of change that overall outlook?
Yeah, so one thing to focus on in terms of Atheneum versus any other platform, forget the blockchain side, forget masternodes, forget anything else that sets us apart blockchain tech-wise, and focus on what your goal is, right? So for BitDegree, they've created this platform to, allow any specific person to go online, create an account, upload your content, and sell your education or your knowledge or whatever. That's great. And, that's a portion of what we want to do. But the thing is that they're not being able to provide any sort of proof of learning that goes along with that. That, proof of learning is something that we want to add to a function and a service on our platform and a part of our blockchain. Being able to send to an employer the proof that you have in fact learned something. And another thing that really sets us apart is that these specific platforms are not necessarily partnering with an educational institution. They're actually, I guess you could say, competing against these educational institutions. And so competing against an educational system that has been growing and continue to control a lot of our society, I would say, not in a bad way, but our educational system controls a lot of our society. And I see more value in being able to complement the educational institutions that do affect our society. What if we could affect the way school systems offer tutoring, or affect the way, they even have students that are, let's say, for example, they're actually missing a day and they're at home sick or whatever. What if the Atheneum platform could, I guess you could say, supplement that missing day by participating online? And it has all of the same material. The teacher doesn't necessarily need to be giving that education. It's already available to them on the platform. And so a goal we've really, it's a part of our mission and vision, is to, we want to complement the educational institutions that, especially in modern day America and across the world, of course. But I think that if we try to fight and try to compete against these educational institutions, we're actually putting ourselves on the back foot. And I think it's an uphill battle from there, just because they just have, the educational system has so much power, and aligning ourselves with the educational system and complementing it and introducing blockchain along with it, I think there's a much greater increase for adoption when you're infiltrating the educational system with your project. So I think that's evident in a lot of what other projects are doing is they're not necessarily trying to compete. They're trying to solve the solutions for these specific industries. People like, you know, and I really don't want to quote names, but you have, let's say, logistics, for example. You have these blockchain projects who are creating these logistics blockchains to help process tracking a lot more efficiently, and they're going to begin using that in cooperation with these other companies like FedEx, UPS, in helping improve these specific systems. They're not necessarily competing against, they're complementing it and improving their system. So there's a lot more value when you can complement a system because you're actually exponentially increasing your I guess you could say your reach. So when we're doing that in the realm of education, there's a lot more, I guess you could say, exponential growth to complement an educational system. So I really don't know what to say to that, but hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. And you actually touched on a couple things that I want to talk about just briefly because it's very important, just key things that you just said that I want to make sure everyone kind of understands. And one of those is the kind of competition aspect. And Atheneum isn't necessarily in competition with any education and platforms or education by itself. I think one of the things that the project is trying to do is just make education kind of up to date for the modern era / easier
Mm-hmm.
to obtain by everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And what's really fascinating about that idea, and this idea has kind of stuck with me for a couple weeks now, is let's look at an example of teachers when they go on summer break.
Mm-hmm.
They could theoretically have an option to connect with students all summer
Mm-hmm.
versus kind of having that gap of forgotten knowledge or kind of a few months of almost summer party vacation. But there's definitely going to be some students that want to keep connecting, and so
Mm-hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
is the potential is not necessarily competing with college or high school or whatever it might be, but just giving another alternative to kind of make things a
Mm-hmm.
little simple because in the long run, everyone wants to learn whether they want to kind of admit it or not. That's just kind of how we are as humans. And so I
Yeah.
think that's the fascinating aspect. And so you did bring up a couple more points that I think would best be explained by kind of what I think we should go over next, which to me is kind of a treat because I think it's really something interesting to look at. And that is we're going to kind of show you a little bit of the ecosystem that Marshall and a few others have been working on. Kind of give you guys a brief rundown of how everything is going to interact and work. We're not going to go too in depth with it
Mm-hmm.
in this chat, mainly because we want to dedicate either a whole another one or a couple to it. That way, there's a really good understanding. And so
Mm-hmm.
Marshall's going to go over briefly with it just for a little bit to kind of give you guys a start to it.
Yep. So what I'm going to do is just um, show this window. You can see that, okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. Um, so this is our ecosystem for the platform. What this essentially is it shows the entire flow of visitors and guests interacting with every specific aspect of our platform, whether that is, let me grab my mouse so you guys can see what I'm looking at. Marcus, can you see my mouse?
I can.
Okay, great. So this is kind of the starting point of where visitors and guests begin. They have, whether it's on a mobile app or if it's just on the web browser marketplace. So you have your students and instructors and whatever other guests that they might be, you have them all interacting here in the marketplace. And, that could be through services or course programs or maybe some affiliates that come from these specific instructors or students or so on and so forth. So the general flow is that out of the marketplace, you have your user review and feedback. You can provide your review and feedback to these different sections. We do plan to have scholarship programs available on the marketplace. The marketplace could also be a function for corporate sales and corporate training, being able to provide corporate training to corporations that would, don't necessarily have the best outlet for teaching new employees the material they need to know as they're coming onto the job. And so, that's just a little bit of segment of service and merchandises that can be had in this specific section. So from the marketplace, you have your individual courses, you have your degree and certificate programs, you have other ancillary services and merchandise, and even ad sales, some ad revenue generation that could be had on the platform. And so that ad sales could actually be, let's say, for example, an institution or an instructor wants to promote a course that they've just released. It's come out within the last few days, and they're going to say it's the best course you need to have. That's a specific revenue that could be generated on the platform. And so over the last few weeks, our team has been working on revenue models and trying to identify every piece of revenue that the marketplace could generate to propel this project forward and grow it exponentially. So you can see kind of the different revenues down here. So sales from these different functions and either be accepted in possibly a fiat currency, or specifically the Atheneum coin. One thing our team is working on right now is building a custom plugin that would allow users to actually transact with Atheneum on the platform. So that's actually really exciting. They're right now custom building an API to interact with the platform and with the blockchain. So that's something that's pretty cool. And so we would earn transaction fees off of these sales. These would go through Masternode and payment processing through the data stack. So you have your blockchain, and this could even go into a side chain where you have your degrees and certificates are recorded on the blockchain, a specific blockchain that we have set aside, not necessarily our main chain, but we have a separate side chain. This is something that a few other projects are doing. They create a side chain, either for smart contracts. Our team has not decided if we want to pursue smart contracts yet, because it would be a lot of work, but the possibility is still there. And then interacting in the classroom. So in the classroom, you could have, a different, a specific flow here where you have your student and instructors are interacting with these different areas. They could interact with your registration and private data, interacting back with the blockchain to provide your specific proof of learning to an employer, to maybe even an educational institution, as proof that you have in fact taken these specific courses, and those courses can be applied towards college credit. That would be an amazing feat, and that's something we could have a positive impact with on the platform. Let me see here. So just moving on up through the classroom, your course performance would obviously be recorded back into the side chain. So your grade, and you can also leave a review of the instructor or of the course or the program. And so there's a lot of different flow that can happen on this platform. We're very excited to see the different functions that we can include. So, being able to allow instructors to track the revenue that they're generating based on their courses. We have been messing with a few different languages and frameworks. So something like Angular, for example, that has a lot of different modules that we can include on the back end for the instructors. So very exciting stuff. I can't really show that off yet because it's not really in a visible state. But hopefully here in the next few weeks, we should have something that I can share. That should be really exciting. And so you guys can feel free to pause this video if you want to take a look at this. But, in future videos, we will be talking about this more in depth. So there's still a lot that could be added to this. This is our second version of the ecosystem. And I'm sure by the time, maybe in a year's time, we'll have version 10, and it's, more refined and it flows better, and, all that good stuff. So do you have any questions about this, Marcus?
I don't have too many. I've just been kind of studying and following along, but I do I do definitely think that we'll have people asking questions, which is great. I definitely encourage that for sure. Moving forward. Awesome. If you could go ahead and hop off screen share real quick.
Okay.
And, there's a
Yeah.
couple more things I wanted to discuss.
Okay.
So, like you said, pause the video, definitely take a look at it. One big takeaway is, again, there's things being built in the background. It doesn't always have to be bright and flashy. Believe it or not, the kind of structure, the foundation is very simple, kind of drawings like this, and that's kind of how we have to start. And something that is really fascinating me again in the last couple of weeks, and I know we've discussed it with Marshall or other people in the team, is I do understand that Atheneum is a blockchain project. However, it's not necessarily the main focus.
Right.
It is going to be a part of the project, but there's so many other aspects, whether it be the marketplace, which is something that really kind of grabs my attention for one, because I've been reading and hearing about people talking about kind of a tokenized future or a broader marketplace, where I think that is kind of brings us back to our roots of you come together and you learn or you share, kind of like what Facebook or YouTube kind of started out as. But I think that we will have an approach that we'll deem it better, more towards the education focus. So
yeah, most definitely. And you brought up an interesting point that yes, this is a blockchain project, but it's not our main focus. That's something we've been really refining over the last few weeks, because this is going to have to be treated like a business. And so that's come from, making sure that we can actually generate multiple streams of revenue in order to ensure that we're building this thing properly. If we're trying to forego any sort of transaction fees, or, trying to make it, I guess you could say, as cheap as possible. I don't want to say as cheap as possible, but try to just say, oh, we're not going to charge anything for it. Like, it's really hard to build stuff for free. At the end of the day, it's hard to put a lot of time and energy into something, to doing it for free and expecting just an amazing product. And so a lot of these, what am I trying to say? A lot of these revenues that we're coming up with, they're going to help power this platform and to turn it into something just amazing. So,
yeah, I mean, ultimately, kind of like you're saying, it is a business, and that's a straight fact. I understand that, decentralized platforms or getting things all working, well, they still have to be built by people, and those people still need to kind of make a living. And at the same time, we want everyone to benefit, whether it be people holding, the Atheneum, coin itself, or working in the platform. The volume is going to completely, rely on the people using the platform in all different manners. So it's a really good point you brought up, and I definitely think that's another opportunity for us to talk further on, is possibly doing an entire episode on just the business model itself. Because there's a lot of unknowns there for, I'm sure, a lot of people, as well as even people within the team, that, and I know me personally, would like to understand a little bit further. But that'll be great. Well, with that, I think this is another great chat for sure. I learn a little bit each time we do it. And one thing I was thinking about today that I would like to ask everyone is, if you guys have any questions that you would want to ask us to maybe go over in the chat, I want to kind of implement maybe a community question. Maybe we can either make a channel in Discord or do a Twitter post of some kind, but find people in the community that have genuine questions and want to ask us, and that way we maybe at the end of each one of these we can kind of go over those, because I'm sure that they're thinking of stuff that we're not thinking of.
Could be. That's a great idea.
It'd be really neat to do. But again, thanks everyone for joining us with this one, and thank you again, Marshall, and I look forward to another good week.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcus.
All righty. I hope everyone has a good night.